Hello, this podcast is recorded on Gadigal country and we pay our respects to the First Nations custodians of the land, both here and also wherever you're listening from. Well, hello, Annabelle Crabb.
Well, hello, Ms. Sales.
How's things?
Things are good. I've been kind of electioning and working on this documentary that I'm making with a lovely team. So I just feel like I'm always working and I go to bed and then I have dreams that are also about work. And sometimes I have ideas in my dreams for how to solve a problem I have in my waking life, and I wake up and write it down and then I go, it's hilarious.
For some reason for the past week I've been having bad dreams all the time.
Really?
Elaborate bad dreams, yeah.
I always I'm mad for the big panic dream. Like my stress dreams are incredibly predictable. They're always about me trying to get somewhere that I've just remembered I have to go and do a story or do a speech or something like that, and I can't get to the airport and I can't use my phone to ring anybody or to delay things or reschedule, and the train isn't working and my phone isn't working, so I can't get a taxi, and I always end up on a bike trying to get to the airport. Yeah.
Sounds actually a little bit like your reality.
Thank you very much.
Speaking of things that feel a bit like a bad dream and actually read a little bit like a horror novel. So I read this book over summer and I've been meaning to talk to you about it, but every time we've done a pod, we've gone in these wild digressions, and so I haven't actually got to it.
It's like a sales fever dream.
I know. It was called Absent in the Spring, and it was a novel. It was actually by Agatha Christie.
Oh.
But she used to write under a pen name called Mary Westmacott, which was what she wrote in when she wasn't writing mystery novels, right?
Were you about to tell me this book about this book a couple of podcasts
Yes.
ago? Because I remember we talked about Agatha Christie, and I remember thinking, oh, she disappeared for a while. That was interesting.
Totally.
And then we got
Totally. And I said I'd come back to it, and then we went off on some absolute
Fantastic.
wild goose chase. So it is a book about, Agatha Christie said it was a book that she was really proud of, and it came out in like 3 days, and it was just, you know, she thought it was a great piece of work. And I agree. I thought it was an excellent piece of work. And I recommended it to Lisa Miller, who read it, and she was also like, that was really properly good. So it's about a woman, it's set in the 1930s. It's about a woman called Joan Scudamore who's been visiting her.
Scudamore. As in I must scatter more seed.
No, as in like Scud missile, Scudamore.
Even better, right. Okay.
Joan Scudamore, she's visiting her daughter in Baghdad, who's married to a British military officer who's stationed in Cairo. And she's en route back to London after a visit with them. She's on and so it's a long journey across land on a train, and, you know, blah, blah. And there ends up being flooding rain that's happening. And so she gets stuck in a town in Iraq in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
Okay.
She's the only visitor in the town, and it's just basically a train station and an outpost, and that's all there is. There's no shops, there's no community, there's the two people that run the kind of hotel affixed to the train station, and that is it. And then it's indefinite because they're like, well, sorry, madam, the rail line's cut, and you've got to occupy yourself.
This actually is my panic dream. This is so weird, isn't it?
I know. So
how did we know to anyway?
Well, it sounds like it was planned, but it actually wasn't.
Why do we keep doing this?
Anyway.
I
know. So she gets stuck in this town, and so the first day kind of passes okay. She's got a book to read, and, you know, she's kind of goes for a walk and stuff. But as the days drag on, how Agatha Christie describes it is she has nothing to do basically but think, and thoughts start appearing like lizards popping out of holes. And so what she starts reflecting on is her life and the choices she's made, and what it boils down to is how she's always viewed herself versus how other people perceive her. And so she starts having these moments where she replays things in her life and then starts thinking, oh, hang on a minute, is that actually how I thought it was, or is it not? And so she starts revisiting things. And then by the end of the trip, she sort of has a bit of an epiphany. When she finally gets on the train home, she meets this woman, and she sort of says to her, I've realised all these things about myself and I need to make some changes. And then I won't spoil the ending about what happens when she gets home. But it is the most compelling read. And in fact, it was recommended to me. Do you remember when I did bibliotherapy years ago? Because I was curious about it. It was one of the books recommended in that about women kind of in midlife. Anyway, it reads I could not put it down. It's got this
I wonder if that's a
creeping-
common like prescription. It's like the one about the concentration camp, you know.
and the woman that
Perk
gets
up
stuck in
and,
a town and has to have a good long hard look at herself. It was a very layered novel. I read it straight after the details that we talked about.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, it's not as good a piece of writing as the details, but
By Ear Genberg, just
Yep.
in case you want to look it up.
which was awesome.
Yep.
But it really, it definitely held its own, and I felt like I would be very proud if I wrote this book. It was really good.
Okay, so I've got a number of thoughts. I read almost everything by Agatha Christie when I was a kid.
Okay,
because
I've not really read anything.
my auntie had like a collection of the, every, a bound kind
Right.
of, looked like the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Right.
So I just,
Murder on the Orient Express,
yeah,
Death
all
on
of
the Nile,
those.
all of
Yeah.
them. Yep.
And they were like, the books were big fat books that had like
And
2 novels
are
in
they
each of
good?
them. Yeah, fantastic.
Okay. Right.
So they are, and they're kind of, I wouldn't say formulaic because she's a much better writer than that, but like there's definitely a kind of, oh, someone's dead, who's done it? There's a few kind of like your focus really starts to hone in on this person, and then in the end there's a reveal and it turns out to be the one that you didn't expect, et cetera, et cetera. But
Right.
like, I mean, I loved reading them when I was a kid, and my kids have to varying extents got into Agatha Christie, and we have listened to some Agatha Christie audiobooks a little bit on like driving around kind of thing. And
Oh, yeah,
yes,
they're probably read by well-known actors too,
exactly.
aren't they? Yeah,
So there's
okay. I'm gonna write that on my to-do
called
list.
Murder at End House, which we listened to once, and as a result, my youngest daughter, whenever she's feeling a bit tired, this one was a Hercule Poirot mystery. She says when she wants to explain that she's feeling tired, she says, "My moustaches are limp," which is what Poirot says at one point because he's at a very hot place and his moustaches are limp.
It set me off immediately because I was so impressed by the book, reading a biography of Agatha Christie.
Right. And
Yes.
there's a bit of her life that was mysterious where she disappeared for like a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Right?
and there's various theories on that, but this
I love that she had a real life mystery.
Yeah, this author mounts a fairly persuasive case. Sorry, I can't remember the name of the author, and I didn't write it down on our list. But
I know the book and I can't remember the name either.
yeah,
but I
it's
think
well
I read it
regarded.
and it
About
was
Lucy
good.
Worsley is
Yeah.
the name of the author.
Well
Sorry,
done.
yeah,
10 points.
I think it's called Agatha Christie.
10 points to Gryffindor.
She makes pretty compelling, persuasive argument that it was a kind of mental health breakdown, and she basically just goes into London and then kind of takes herself off to a hotel in the country where she checks in under a different name and kind of just keeps to herself. And
Okay, so-
she's in a bad marriage at the time that ends up ending.
So
Yeah.
did she write this book after that or before?
She had already written some books. She was a famous author when she went missing.
No, but like the book that you're talking about,
right.
that's a bit different from, it's not a murder mystery. It's what happens when a lady gets stuck
No,
somewhere.
it's a biography of Agatha Christie.
No, the one that you were talking about
Oh,
a minute ago. Oh my God.
Okay.
Just need some flashcards here. Like,
The reason this podcast works so well is because of the way we have this mind meld where I just know exactly what you're thinking at any given time.
I'm just trying to execute the most eloquent and elegant kind of observation, but you're just physically lying down in the road in front of me. You're just like,
I'm like a
you're
cat
just
when
like
you
a
try to
dumb
type.
Max.
Just-
Just like, I'm trying to make this beautiful.
I think it was written after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and here I offer up the bloodied shreds of this lovely thing I was just trying to do without your
Yes.
cooperation. So, how interesting that after a busy and productive career of writing books in which lots of things happen,
Yep.
she writes a book in which not much happens and the lady's brain explodes.
Wonderful observation. Had I
Thank
known
you.
you were going to offer that, I would have just
was a
gotten out of the
Bit
way
of a fucking
earlier.
hike, let me tell you. But the view's lovely from up here.
She also, Agatha Christie her second husband was a man who was very significantly younger than her, like 20 years younger than her.
Right.
Yeah.
So did she come back from the little time away and punt the first husband?
I can't remember who punted who now, actually.
Right.
I can't remember how that unfold? Oh, he punted her. In fact, actually, I think a key moment in the breakdown was he left her for somebody else.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
So yeah, I think that was, if I'm remembering correctly, because it's a while now.
Yeah, I'm
since
really
I've read
testing your reading comprehension of this book.
But then she ended up with this man called Max, and they had a very happy relationship, but they seemed to have a bit of an understanding because he was an archaeologist and he buggered off to Cairo for months at a time. So yes.
All right. Well, that sounds cool. I've been like, this is actually a pretty good segue that you will not have seen coming, because Agatha Christie novels always remind me of sort of English country houses where there's a house party and everybody retires after sherry, and then a piercing scream tears through the night at 3 a.m. and somebody's been found in the study with a revolver or something.
Yeah.
And it actually reminds me very directly of a show that I've been watching with my family kind of intensively over the last week, which is a series called The Traitors.
Oh, yes.
Now,
okay.
I have had The Traitors, which is a franchise, like there's an
Australian one.
I'm watching the first episode of the UK one.
Okay.
And I was unaware of this show except that I heard it on The Rest Is Entertainment.
Yeah.
I heard Marina and Richard talking about it.
And didn't he say one of the Australian series is the greatest television he's ever seen?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it was either Richard or Marina, either of them anyway. So I know that the Australian series of The Traitors is supposed to be amazing. And I actually went and tried to find it and couldn't at the time, and then forgot about the whole thing.
Right.
And now we are watching The Traitors UK Series 1.
Okay. Which should be a few years old now.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
And the host, I think, has changed, because I think Alan Cumming now is the host of it in the UK. But
was it a woman called Claudia something?
Yes,
very
Claudia
dark
Winkleman,
right.
with like fantastic bangs, and a very, very competitive line in funnel neck coats and jumpers.
Oh yeah,
and also fingerless gloves. I love her.
Right.
She's like Kunk, but with like an extra bit of evil.
Right.
And so the idea is this, and I'm watching the first series, so nobody's learned how to game it or anything yet. They take all these individuals to a castle in Scotland, and it's kind of like Murder in the Dark. They sit them down, they all get to know each other, and then they say, well, of the, 20 of you, 3 of you are traitors, and the rest of you are faithfuls.
And do you, as the viewer, know who the 3 traitors are?
Yeah, you know from
the
number
start.
1.
Right.
But I don't think that the faithfuls or the traitors know how this is going to be edited or put to air. So they don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I think it would be significant for strategy, but park that thought. So what happens is that every night all of the participants get driven off to their individual accommodation. 3 of them, the traitors, come back and they put gowns on and carry lanterns through the grounds of the castle. and they get together every night, these traitors, and they decide who to murder overnight.
Right.
And the person who's been murdered is just advised by letter. You've been murdered.
Right.
Pack your bags. Your car will be taking you home immediately, and they're never seen again. And the way the other, and so the traitors are in among all the rest of the participants every day. They're doing little exercises and competitions to earn money to put into the prize pool.
Right.
And one of them gets murdered every night, and they find out who it is when at breakfast the next morning somebody just doesn't show up. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, how interesting can this be?
And are they trying to are the followers trying to unmask a traitor?
Well, every couple of nights they have a big round table meeting, and they have to nominate somebody. They have to each vote for somebody to be expelled.
Right.
And the idea is that the faithfuls have to find out who the traitors are and successfully vote them off.
Right.
Because by the end of the competition, if there are still undiscovered traitors, they take all of the prize pool.
Oh, okay, right.
Otherwise, it's the faithfuls who, are remaining who.
Okay, so what makes it compelling?
Well, because number one, the traitors are aware that like there's huge amounts of speculation about who the murderers are, right?
Right.
And so obviously if they get the sense that somebody is getting too close to pinging them, they'll quickly whack that person. But that also makes it a kind of easy crime to detect, right? Like so the strategy is, well, how do we think a few days ahead and work out who's going to become a problem?
Right.
Should we performatively whack someone who we're close to so it doesn't look like we're the traitors?
Right.
It's kind of...
Wow.
Yeah.
And do the traitors do all three of them have to agree on who they're whacking?
Yep.
And so they work together. They can't turn on each other.
Well, I haven't finished watching the series yet.
Right.
They make a pledge not to turn against each other. But
Right.
anyway, what I will say...
Given that there's three of them, you could absolutely see a scenario where two might gang up against three in a certain way.
1,000%. That's the first thing I thought.
Yeah.
But at the moment, they're sort of defending each other, and if one of them hears one of the other traitors being floated in a sort of breakfast conversation, they'll kind of go in and, but at some point in the competition, and I'm only I think I'm on episode 7 or something, obviously the incentive for a traitor to betray another traitor will get sharper and sharper.
Yeah, right.
And the thing that is truly... There are two things that I find unbelievable, and one of them's depressing and one of them's kind of compelling. One is the amount of just generalized prejudice in who people assume to be the untrustworthy people.
Wow.
Is just
really?
Yeah.
In what kind of way?
Racist.
Wow. Oh, God.
Yep. And just to watch people explaining why they just think that this person is not trustworthy. And as a viewer, you're just going, sorry, are you for real? Anyway, so there's that. And the other thing is how extraordinarily emotional it gets almost immediately.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So the kids and I were talking last night about the fact that I think almost every man in the program has cried, just ugly crying.
From the
buckets.
stress?
Yeah.
Right.
Because, they all have to get along during the day, and they do these sort of team building exercises. They're you've got to build this, you've got to work together. And by working together, they win money for the prize pool, which is the shared prize pool. So they're all traitors and faithfuls together working on the tasks, but they know every night one of them's going to get killed by whoever it is that's the secret traitors. Plus, the more upsetting thing is that when they do these sort of voting people off the castle, it's on a round table. They're all looking into each other's faces and they go, "Look, I'm really sorry, Aaron. I just think you're a liar."
Oh, it's not a secret vote.
No way, baby. You're around the table, You've got to put up a piece of card saying who you're voting for.
Oh, my God, wow.
And I know that you're interested in psychological experiments where people go with the group.
Yeah.
It is in such incredible... This is like a showcase of group behaviour.
Oh, that sounds really good.
Because once somebody around the table's got 3 votes... They kind of go, yeah, I'm voting for Aaron too. Meanwhile, Aaron is hyperventilating into a paper bag. It's just, and then, so when somebody gets voted out because they get a majority of votes around the round table, they have to go and stand on this spot. It's great castle porn. It's a fantastic castle. You get to see a lot of cool castle stuff. They stand on this spot and then they have to declare as they walk out the door whether they are in fact a traitor or a faithful. And every time they expel someone who then says, "I told you, I'm a faithful," then there's just vomiting. There's kind of and the crew, they've shot it beautifully. Every reaction shot that you want to see, they show you.
That sounds really good. That sounds like Survivor, but with all the stuff I'm not interested in cut out, like the puzzle solving and the having to fetch wood.
There's a little bit of, but it's quite it's. I think that the way that the exercises work is that they are the sort of evil genius of it is that the exercises are collaborative. So even the people who have been shouting at each other and screaming and kind of crying the night before all seem to have a lovely time during the day when they're working collectively on something, and then they go back to just betraying each other. It's quite.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, so much crying.
Sounds quite delicious.
And there's one kind of like lady that my daughter is just obsessed with impersonating. It makes me think that my youngest daughter is in fact just a chav, like in an Australian child's body. She is a northern chav. There's this like lady who's fantastic who goes, "Oh, I could murder a cocktail." And now that's everything that my kid says.
That's always happening. Sometimes it's funny when we're recording these pods because what becomes clear is that there's a theme that wasn't immediately apparent. And I believe that
is it murder?
I believe it's nice digs, actually, because I want it two things along the nice digs theme. One is White Lotus, which is set in that amazing resort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know we've already talked about White Lotus, but
I know what you want to talk about.
When we recorded it, Sam Rockwell had yet to deliver that monologue that everyone who's watched the show has been talking about. You hadn't seen it, but Jeremy had, and we were at a party together and got talking about it. And as soon as he said, "What about that Sam Rockwell monologue?" we both just dissolved into complete hysterics. It reminded me a little bit of, I won't say too much about it because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who.
We set the scene,
The character whose father has died in his childhood and he's on that kind of what seems to be a revenge
haunted,
quest.
Middle-aged, slightly sketchy guy with a hot girlfriend.
Yeah, who's the girl from Sex Education.
Yeah.
He's gone to Bangkok and he's caught up with an old friend who's played by the actor Sam Rockwell. And Sam Rockwell delivers this monologue basically about what's been going on in his life. And it reminded me of the scene in that doco that we both loved, Fire, where the man's recounting the anecdote about that he believes he's going to have to go and give a blowjob to somebody to secure a crate of water bottles. And as you're...
He genuinely believes that will be something that he's going to have to do.
And as a viewer, when you're watching him recount this story, your face... I mean, I think I said to you at the time I would have loved to see like a camera on someone's face watching it because... The just array of emotions like disbelief, horror, that goes through your mind. And when Sam Rockwell's giving this monologue about what his life in Bangkok's been like, full props to the other actor's face because the whole scene is very comic, but a lot of the comedy, and it just goes to show when you're a great actor, you can do a lot when you've got no lines. And he's not hamming it up by any stretch, but his face, I felt like, was mirroring my exact reaction listening to what Sam Rockwell was saying. He just does it. It's that face that you're giving friends.
It's the face that says, ow.
Ow, exactly.
Ow.
It's the face that when someone's telling you something absolutely batshit crazy, but you're trying to follow along and trying to seem open-minded and like you're just kind of rolling with it, even though you're just like, what the actual...
And he's managed to perfect, and it's not an easy thing to do because I guess as an actor, it's pretty straightforward if you're good at it to convey an emotion. But what's harder is to show somebody trying to bury an emotion.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
And that kind of slightly sick rictus grin that you get when you're like trying to act as though you're totally cool and unsurprised by and very open to and non-judgmental about the thing that some freak is unspooling in front of you. It's quite a thing to pull off.
It really is. And also, as well as trying to suppress an emotion, kind of multiple emotions. I mean, the other actor who springs to mind that we've talked about before was...
Martin Freeman. Are you about to say that? No, I'm just like...
No.
There's a man who can act with his face.
The guy who's Malotru in The Bureau, the French actor.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's both simultaneously being a spy, so not showing any... So to the other characters in the scene, he's showing... nothing, no reaction, but somehow is acting through to you as the viewer at home, showing the actual cogs ticking of what he's actually thinking. It was just...
That's a really good explanation. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he does do that.
Okay, so nice digs number one. Nice digs number two, with love, Meghan, or Meghan, however you pronounce her name, Meghan Markle's show on Netflix. Again, everyone on the planet's had a weigh in on this, but what the hell, let's do it.
Okay, so... I mean, let's take this from the sideways. I don't really want to kind of join in on the full pecking party on this chick. I noticed a couple of weeks ago when Netflix said that they were commissioning series 2 of With Love from Meghan.
I think it's just With Love, comma, Meghan.
Meghan. Hand calligraphed. And there was this whole like, oh, what? What are you talking about? Like, what? Look, what? This is junk. Haven't we just all, as a television watching universe, declared that this is rubbish TV? No, what we've managed to confirm is that people are hate watching this thing, and actually to Netflix, who cares if they're hate watching it or regular watching it? Like it's so. My only concern about that is that, like, I mean, whatever she's getting paid for this series, she's earning, just not in the conventional way. Like, I find it fascinating to watch because of some of the struggles that are happening on screen in front of you. But it's not a relaxing watch. I sort of feel like I want someone to go in there and give her a hug.
So when you say she's earning, are you saying it's like a bullying tax? So the whole planet can hate?
It's danger money. Yeah, it's danger money.
Yeah.
Like, she's essentially, I mean, they're getting the eyeballs, but they're getting the eyeballs from people who are watching it so that they can join in on, kind of a bit of a mob justice kind of, and have you seen this? Like, I saw something today or yesterday, which was a little clip of Meghan Markle saying, have you ever thought of, like, rinsing out a jam jar and reusing it just to put things in, or like lovely precious things, or love letters, or tresses of hair, or whatever? And of course, there's been, I guess, an explosion of people going,
Now,
been doing that for a bit, champ.
Before we talk about the actual content of the show, just to stick on the theme of not joining the pile-on, one positive thing I'd say about it is I had a friend who really enjoyed it, and she liked it, and I asked her why, and she said, because it didn't require anything of me. I could just look at somebody making some pretty stuff in a nice kitchen and admire their crockery and kind of enjoy just plates of food and little gifty things. And my friend felt like, it was just easy. Just also, a mindless kind of easy, pretty watch.
If it's the friend that I think you're talking about, that friend is an extremely hospitable person.
Yeah.
Like, we'll go to the nth degree to make sure that everything is perfect.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that is kind of the premise. I don't know, I've watched a couple of episodes and I keep falling asleep in them.
Totally.
But that seems to be, how to really push the boat out to make your friends feel comfortable.
Now, this gets us to the actual content.
Yeah.
And so you and I watched episode 1 of it at around the same time, and we both had the same reaction, which was it opens with Meghan Markle. She's got a friend who's coming to stay, and she's making some stuff to put on the person's bedside table, and it's a thing of bath crystals so they can have a bath. It's a bag of pretzels that she was really heavily ridiculed because she just opened a bag of pretzels and put them in a new bag
and put a lovely ribbon and a hand calligraphed little
and
label,
a bag of
which that did make me laugh,
and a bag of popcorn as well, and blah,
she
blah,
did
blah.
make the popcorn. It was hand popped with love.
Now, the thing that you and I both said was that put us off. You actually made me laugh. You made me laugh so hard because you said, I just feel like, because we were both saying the pressure, because she's gone to all this trouble, even if you were stuffed after dinner and exhausted, you would have to have a bath and you would have to eat some pretzels and some popcorn. So she knew that you had, because you just know
she'd be checking.
You'd be coming out to breakfast the next morning and she'd be greeting you with that big, sunny, beautiful face going, so did you have the bath crystals? And you'd be just like, yeah, and I also ate some pretzels, and you'd just be resenting like the level of just the pressure around it. And you in fact said, I couldn't help but think when I saw those bath salts that I just wanted an ocean between me and those bath salts. And that was how I felt too.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something, there's something very, I think, sterile about it.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably the thing that people are sensing. And, there's all sorts of commentary about, what about the one where she's planning a kids' party? There aren't any kids, and all this sort of stuff.
The word that comes to my mind, and I don't like this word being used as an insult. The word is strive and striver, because I think that word is often used as a weapon against people who are trying to kind of improve their station in life, right? And so they're
Like that big article about Jeremy Strong
Exactly
being like,
right.
he just tries too hard.
He was a poor kid from the back
which is a
blocks
lovely thing to be able to sledge people for when you haven't had to try very hard.
Absolutely, that's right. And so the fact that Jeremy
Yeah.
Strong befriended Daniel Day-Lewis and like bent over backwards to become his friend and stuff makes him a striver. And I think that is kind of it can be used in a very patronising kind of way.
Sure, yeah.
Nonetheless,
Agreed.
I'll use it in relation to Meghan Markle because she's not, while in the past maybe she was pulling herself up by her bootstraps, now she's married to one of the heirs to the throne. Like she's on a different kind of level. But there is a note where she just appears to be trying so hard all the time, and it's somewhat. I find that somewhat off-putting. It's the only button I can kind of put my finger on as to why is it kind of alienating to me? Well, why is her manner alienating to me? And it's just almost like she's trying too hard for me to like her.
But I don't. But I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's not a sort of. It's not the sort of the tension and the inability to quite get there is not actually to do with finding a nice way to present pretzels or a quick one dish pasta, one pot pasta dish or whatever. The thing that doesn't quite get there is easy intimacy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it at a sort of subterranean level a kind of tense watch, because you're watching two people typically converse who are sort of a bit awkward with each other, even though they're friends. And
the one that I watched with the person who comes to and gets the pretzels and the bath salts is her old makeup artist. Now, also the nature of the conversation, like say when you and I are having a conversation, I don't drop just casually into conversation things like, I remember when we first met, you were always wonderful in the kitchen. You were always terrific with a plate of part. You know what I mean? It just feels unnatural. If anything, friends kind of do the opposite.
Yeah, I think I need a bit more sledging to make it,
maybe
a little bit more
maybe it's
convincing.
a cultural thing.
But I do feel a bit like I'm a bit uncomfortable with the degree of the pile on.
Yeah,
not because I think
agree.
God, if you don't want to get yelled at, don't make a TV show. Surely she doesn't need it for the money or whatever. But
I agree. But in terms of the actual pylon, I will pay one, I think the highest quality of the pylon material. Tina Brown, the former editor of Vanity Fair, writes a Substack called Fresh Hell.
Yeah. Great name for a Substack.
Absolutely fantastic. And I've talked about her on the podcast before, Vanity Fair Diaries, superb read. The Diana Chronicles, the one about Kate and Meghan, I forget what it's called, Palace Papers. They're all brilliant reads, and she's written extensively about the royals. She wrote a long, very entertaining, astute, but quite excoriating piece about With Love Meghan. Anyway, it had a line in it that I absolutely loved about Kate Middleton, and it described, Kate Middleton succumbed without murmur to royal pantyhose. What a great...
The nude hose thing. I didn't know that until the Meghan Markle era.
It was great.
It's apparently verboten to go out in public with a bare leg.
Really?
If you're in the royal family, you have to wear nude hose.
I thought that was just a form of words to sum up beautifully joining the royal family.
Mate,
no,
no,
it's an actual
literal rule.
thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pantyhose. You have to, you really have to wear pantyhose. Nude if necessary.
Now, we've, of course, gone off track of what we were going to talk
have
about.
We?
So,
but I had a book I urgently wanted to talk about.
You that's why I'm just culling other stuff because I know that you're dying to talk about this book and I'm dying to hear about this book. So,
okay. So I just accidentally saw a couple of articles about this new memoir by a former Facebook staffer. And it's called Careless People. And I don't know, I only knew about it because they were trying to kind of shut her down. And so there's a couple of articles like Rolling Stone, a couple of others just saying, oh my God, come on, Meta. You've tried to shut this chick down. And as a result, she's at the top of the New York.
Oh, right.
Yeah, she's a bestseller, right?
Right.
And this woman's name is Sarah Wynne Williams, and she is a New Zealander, And she was working in the early 2000s, I think, at the UN as a diplomat from New Zealand.
Right.
And she was sort of a bit bored and found that the UN wasn't quite the kind of, save the world arena that she was looking for. But she's also quite a keen Facebook user, and she decided, and this is according to her account.
Right.
She starts the book with an account at the time that she was very nearly eaten by a shark as a child, which is quite dramatic, actually got munched. Yeah. So, she can tell a yarn, this lady. Strong opening, yeah. Right. She's still got tooth marks on her abdomen.
Oh, my God.
So anyway, she decides that she wants to work at Facebook because she decides that Facebook is going to change the world, connect the world, and this will become this incredible opportunity for international diplomacy, and that Facebook really needs a head of global policy to work with the ramifications of, what it's going to do as it rolls out across the world. And so she writes to someone at Facebook and tries to apply for this job that doesn't exist, and they reply and say, look, this job doesn't exist. And she keeps pestering and pestering. Eventually, they agree to create this job. And then she becomes, over the years, she's sort of working with Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg, and she's flying around, to Davos and various, diplomatic appointments in various countries of the world that Facebook is trying to get access to.
Right.
And there's a lot of very hilarious, unflattering, this happened on the private jet type material that is what you're kind of paying the bucks for, is like, what are these people like when you're working for them?
And so what is the answer?
Well, awful is the short answer. And so Facebook has described the book as defamatory and false.
Right.
And they tried to, I think, have it not published because when she left Facebook, I think there was some sort of, NDA or something, and then she made a complaint of harassment that then kind of went through the courts. I can't remember exactly what the legal situation was, but essentially it appears that Facebook's made some attempts to kind of, shut this shit down, and as a result, everyone's like, oh, this must be interesting.
Right.
And so it is an unscratchably readable book.
Wow. Okay.
Could not put it down.
And so give us the dirt on what happens on the plane.
Oh, look, there's a lot of things about, there's a lot of observations of organisational structure and disinclination to challenge the alpha person at the head of the organisation. So they play this board game where all of them just let Mark Zuckerberg win the whole time. At some point, he decides that he, is going to get interested in global affairs. After all, he decides he's going to run for president. It becomes, and as Facebook gets bigger and bigger, and this is actually the part that is structurally the most interesting thing in the book. And because it actually corresponds with things that you've seen publicly, I believe what she says about this.
Right.
She may have put a bit of mayo on the sandwich about Sheryl Sandberg asking her to slip between the sheets with her on the private jet, and how she does this to chicks all the time and it makes them awkward. There's some wild sort of gear in there.
So as in asks her to sleep with her?
Yeah, but I think not in a sexual way. I think in a kind of all girls together sort of way. And she's like, no, I've got work to do, thank you. And also she says that, that the provisions at Facebook for maternity leave or any kind of flexibility around parenting were just, she says, zero, despite the fact that she was working for Lean In Lady. There's a lot of that stuff. And look, she's a really good writer, this chick. She carries it off. She's got a sort of a wry twist of consciousness of what she's involved in, how mad it is. So it's an enjoyable read for that reason. She can really kind of lean into the comedy of what's happening. So that makes it kind of a terrific read. But the really kind of chilling thing is that at the beginning, Zuckerberg is completely not interested in geopolitics at all. And what she says, doing is you have to have a position on this stuff, because you are Facebook, as it gets bigger and bigger, is actually influential on people. And so you've got to have a relationship with the people making decisions. And then he becomes more and more interested in politics as he realises that the only way to expand into some of these countries is to get politicians enthused about the possibility of using Facebook as a campaign tool.
Right.
So you can see what's happening here, right? Like it starts to get a bit meldy. And there's this extraordinary scene after the 2016 election where they're on a jet, they're going to Davos, and essentially the entire world has turned around after 2016 and said, well, look, Facebook won that election for Donald Trump. And according to her account, Zuckerberg's sitting on his jet saying, well, that's just rubbish, that's not true. And his staffers are going, it just sort of kind of is though, isn't it? Like, I mean, we sort of did. I mean, we had people embedded, like we were showing the Trump people how to use these tools and whatever. Like, and he just refuses to believe. Yeah, and then he has this sit-down session with Barack Obama where Obama just goes through him, and he's so rattled after that it's kind of so.
Wow.
So it's tricky because you think, well, this is a contested account. This is this woman's contested account, but some of the bigger shifts that she describes in corporate thinking at Facebook do gel with what you can see from the outside. And there's, towards the end, there's a recap of what they've done in China because they're trying to get into China. They're blocked in China. And what this book goes through is the agreements that were kind of hammered out in negotiation with the Chinese government, which included things like, well, we'd be happy to host Chinese information only in China in circumstances where the government could demand access to user detail and, which is kind of completely the opposite of what they always said they would do.
Has Facebook now sued now that it's come out, or they just did the preemptive injunction
I think they did a preemptive attempt to stop it. Right. She, weirdly enough, so the publisher seems to have been kind of cluey about it in that they just dropped the book. And from what I've read, it sounds like Facebook was sort of not aware of it until just before it showed up.
Oh, right.
And so there's this sort of attempt to get an injunction, I think. I'm not sure what the process is in the United States. And then it came out anyway. And, of course, because various journalists said they were contacted by Facebook and told, look, if this book comes across your desk, please just know that it's filthy, heinous lies. And of course, every journalist goes, great, what did you say the name was? Fantastic. And because it's sort of so raucous, and there's no denying that she was in this quite senior job, right? Actually, the author, and this is the weirdest thing, she's not doing any interviews to promote the book because she is bound by the NDA or whatever legal instrument. So she's not doing interviews, but she sort of doesn't need to because there's a lot of people writing and talking about the book.
Yeah, right.
Apparently she's been working with Twiggy Forrest.
Wow. I'm just curious to know then, will they take any action after? Because presumably if you're going to publish stuff like that, you'd want to have a fairly decent contemporaneous record or...
Well, dolls though, this is the thing about defamation. With a book that covers so much territory that this book does, if that's an organisation or as...
Oh, you can't defame an organisation. Oh, well, can you in the US?
I was just trying to... I think the easiest way would be for Zuckerberg to proceed against her.
Yeah.
But the problem is, once you... and I'm not familiar with the way defamation law works in the United States the way I am with the way it works here, but once you say what you claim to be defamatory, it's defamatory of you to say that I, was a hypocrite about, working with Donald Trump and then fibbing about it, or there's a particularly upsetting Australian-based example that she tells in the book about a company that was pitching Facebook to some corporate client and saying, you know, we have such great algorithms now that we can tell when users are feeling depressed or vulnerable, and that's the moment where you try and sell them, you know. And this person also said, you know, like when a teenager is feeling depressed and vulnerable, that's when you sell them, you know, I don't know, beauty products or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of actually frightening levels of what you can do with information from Facebook, which is heaps.
Wow.
Like there's a line in there, I think, oh, no, this might have been from another book, so don't necessarily associate it with this one, about how social media platforms can detect if a young woman has deleted a selfie, they'll know to serve a beauty product because they've probably deleted the selfie because they've gone, why have I got so many chins, or like, why do I look so gross? Bing!
Wow. That's incredible.
Right? So that's terrifying stuff.
Good.
But it is a thrilling read. And I mean, I do not know what happens next because, to complete the sentence, if you say what's defamatory about a book and then you sue, then it's on you. I mean, you then have to talk about why it's not you have to demonstrate that it isn't that it's not true.
Yeah.
But what if you can't show that it's not true? Or what if showing that it's not true involves you coughing up all of these files and emails and texts that are 100 times worse, right?
Absolutely.
So that is the exciting thing about defamation, particularly in this modern age where so many communications are captured and retained by devices and phones and stuff.
Very interesting. I'll be looking out for that. All right. Well, I'm going to start the next pod by talking about a couple of films that were nominated for an Oscar because I watched them and I've been trying to talk about them in proximity to the Oscars. But of course, yet again, time has got away from us.
Time for next year soon.